Well, that didn't work out well.
It wasn't me.
I don't know.
It wasn't me.
Let's try that one more time. Hold on.
Tortured souls. Science. Paranormal. Tortured souls. Entertain, educate, recreate, and intoxicate.
Woo! Okay, there we go. I guess the StreamYard added some new functionality I am not familiar with. Because I clicked the intro video, and then when you hit live stream, it says play it with the intro video.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it's already playing. What the hell? So then it canceled them both out for some reason. Anyway, obviously I need to become reacquainted with StreamYard. It's only been
Dave
we skip 1 month and it all goes to shit.
Officially has the title of worst opening.
Well, you know, Tim still has the title of the worst closing, so we gotta find a way for Kenny to fuck it up in the middle of the show now.
There you go.
Whose idea was Leyland's? That was Kenny's. He's got
that was mine.
He's got the worst fuck up between the opening and closing.
Anyway, how you guys doing?
20-minute show.
That was good.
How you doing?
Yeah.
Welcome. How you doing?
Thank you.
Everybody
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Good. It's been a while. I think we skipped last month.
We did.
Yeah.
Right.
We did. I missed this.
I think I got busy, then Tim got busy, something happened.
I did.
And I got busy, then Kenny was busy. So
Yeah.
I think
that's
screw it. Go next month.
It was Tim and then me. I was gone the week after. I was away, so we couldn't do it.
Then
but
Kenny sent a message, I think, eventually, like, we're going to have a show one of these days. And we also need to determine movie night. And we also have a conference we're going to that we have to still pick a talk for.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think we have ideas for the title. We just need to finalize that and get it off to them.
Right. Yeah.
I like your concept for the talk, though.
Yeah, we just got to pick a topic and not the night before.
Well, I mean, why break tradition?
Presentation together.
I know. Like just tell them that we have a presentation. We just don't know what it is yet. We're all going to be surprised.
Yeah, we're going to show up. We're going to be surprised.
Yeah.
Even if you pick a topic, none of us will study it until the night before while we're in the room. Yeah.
We could have the lamest talk ever and just go up there and go open mic night.
There you go.
Ooh.
Just ask us questions.
Are they going to allow us to stream it?
I don't know. I guess it depends on the Wi-Fi or if we can get connected.
Yeah, I'm not too excited about streaming anything live at a conference anymore. After
it is Virginia,
it's more technically advanced than West Virginia. Let me tell you.
We might actually be able to stream it then. Who knows? All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. Tonight we are going to talk about the Shroud of Turin. It's going to be... I don't think we're going to have enough time because we try to keep the show to about an hour now. And the pages and pages of notes I have, I don't think that we're going to probably get through everything. I know Kenny's probably got a lot and Tim's got some stuff. So, I mean, just for me, I think I went through at least 3 books, two magazines, a couple online articles, and about 11 journal articles or so. And finally, I'm like, okay, that's good enough to fill an hour or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Well, after watching you two go back and forth in our little private chat over the month, I was like, there's no point for me to get. I went, of course, I took another avenue, which was just as interesting to me. So it won't be too bad. I ended up going down. I just wanted to see like what's the attraction and the like why the importance of symbolic relics and the psychology behind it. Ended up in cultural anthropology, Google Scholar, and freaking loved it. I was like, where was this when I was changing all my majors in college? Because I would have majored in this for at least 6 weeks and then changed again.
6 weeks would have got you out of statistics, maybe.
Oh, for the second time.
He could have dropped it for the third time. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, there's a ton. I was surprised. I didn't honestly. I'd heard about it, read a little bit about it. I had no idea there's this much stuff on it. There's societies, there's meetings, I thought just for shits and giggles, let's Google Scholar, Shroud of Turin. 14,600 hits.
Wow.
And there is a ton of books and journal like legit published journal articles on this thing. So pretty crazy. But we talked about this before we started the show, and we decided that for probably the first and only time, we're going to start with a reading from the Bible, which we're going to make Kenny do.
Gather around the fire, boys and girls. It's story time. It's only going to be a short one. This is John, the Gospel of John, chapter 19, verse 39 to 40. And there came also Nicodemus, which at first came by Jesus by night and brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100-pound weight. Then took they the body of Jesus and wound it in linen clothes with the spices, as the manner of the Jews is to bury. Now in the place where he was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new sepulchre. Am I saying that right? I think that's right.
Close enough for drinking.
Yeah, it's good. Wherein was never man yet laid. There laid they Jesus, therefore, because of the Jews' preparation day, for the sepulchre was nigh at hand. And that's it. That's all I'm reading. That's all I can do.
Cool.
That's just the version of exactly what we're dealing with here. That part. And then if you want to talk for a little bit, I can find the part where they find it.
Yeah, go ahead. You can do that. Tim, why don't we just kind of go around, do our opening remarks as Kenny looks for that. I'll let you go.
Yeah, sure. And it's just kind of like what I was saying. It was interesting to me about the fascination, not only with this, but with others as well. It turns out that there is kind of a psychological, I guess, culturally need for some symbols in societies. Again, I ended up, I picked two, they turned out to be an American anthropologist. Shit.
Anthropological.
I've already drank too much. I'm already pre-gaming.
Wow. He's drinking straight from the tap.
He's drinking straight Kula.
This is my second bottle.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Anthropologist, whatever.
Anthropologist.
You know those things. Thank you. That's it. Anyway, yeah, I liked it. It was good. They do a lot of research into it. Again, I found it very interesting. I enjoyed it. It's something that I certainly could get into and actually kind of want to continue reading about after this.
All right. I found the rest of it.
Oh,
here we go. So this is chapter 20, verse 6. This is after the burial, and now it's the next day. They go to the tomb. It's open. Mary Magdalene comes running like, hey, shit's open. Come over and look. So verse 6 says, then cometh Simon Peter following him, and went into the sepulchre, and seeth the linen clothes lie, and the napkin that was about his head not lying with the linen clothes, but wrapped together in a place by itself. And that's about it. So they saw it. So that gives you That's from a 1951 Bible. This big ass thing.
Dang, large
Yeah,
print.
I know.
So you can read it.
It's heavy. That's the kind you threaten your kids with. Like, I'm gonna put the fear of God in you by throwing it at you.
Hit you with that.
So,
all right, first impressions, and then we'll have Kenny give his first impressions, and then I'll put a slide up that kind of takes us through the history, because there's a lot to it. There's a ton.
Okay.
There's a lot to it, and then we'll kind of just get into a couple different topics, like some of the folklore, some of the ideas of how the image was formed, maybe, some of our, I would say, I don't know, experimenting or screwing around, seeing what we could do to create or recreate certain things.
Okay.
Anyway, so Kenny, what are your initial thoughts before we dive into the timeline here?
This was something I've always been fascinated with. Growing up, I grew up Catholic, so I knew about this. We knew about, and we were taught definitely that this was indeed a holy relic, and that it was really the cloth that wrapped around Jesus. But later on, as I dived back into it and looked at it, I'm looking at it from a photography point of view. I mean, that's the first thing I do, because I see an image. It's not a photograph. I'm going to say that bluntly. It is not a photograph. But I see the properties that one would look at and the details. And then studying the details about how it was made. Because basically, when I look at a picture and somebody says there's an anomaly in it, I'm saying, all right, what kind of photo, what kind of camera, what was the environment like? What were you doing? All these details. And looking at the details between the biblical descriptions and what I see in that image simply don't match up. It just doesn't match up at all. So my impression is that it probably is a forgery, but I also want to add in, and we can explain this a little later and as we go on, I think the entire thing, people overthink it. I think there's a lot of overthinking going into this on both sides. And yeah, we can wrap it up at the end and talk about, I can explain that a little bit more. But yeah, my first impression is it doesn't, I don't think it's a relic. Well, I mean, a relic by definition isn't actually like from that person, but it's something people look up to and cherish. But I don't think it's the imprint of a person, a real person. At least I don't think it's the imprint of Jesus. I want to say that. And then I'll pass it along to Tim.
My first thought was when we started, I'm like you, like it's obviously something, growing up, you hear about a lot. So came up Catholic as well. But my first thought, like I had never really done a whole lot of deep diving into it. But my first instinct was to try to find the first mention in any literature about it. It seems like, I don't know what you guys came up with, but I found right around 1300, placing it somewhere around 1260 and 1390 with a family, French noble family. So I found that interesting. It was, it looks like I couldn't find anything further back than that. But then again, I kind of switched subjects and went in a different direction after that. But following some steps with it, as most things do, it kind of turned into, I got a lot of notes. So there was, I even, one of the things that I messaged you guys was about the importance politically, about how one family had it. And then it turned into a political chess piece, which I kind of think heightened the importance of validity for it. And probably at that time, 1400s, I guess, looks like it was in Italy. I would imagine if you had some type of very powerful person that says this is the way it is and you don't question it, then you probably just didn't question it. And that's the way it was. And it just kind of went from there.
Okay. All right. Why don't we start with a little bit of a description? I'll put up couple points here. It shows the ventral and dorsal images. So you got the front and the back. It's about 14.5 or so feet by 3.5 or so feet, which ignore all the typos because I didn't go through and spell check this. It conforms to Middle Eastern measurements, supposedly. It's a woven cloth 3-in-1 herringbone twill. It's composed of flax. There is some cotton, though, and some other fibers in there because when we get to the actual timeline, which I'm not going to read the whole thing, we'll point out a couple important things. There was restoration work done on it. There's actually not that long ago, there was a backing put on it, so you can't see the back image anymore. It's a faint yellow color. It's a man, supposedly with a beard, mustache, shoulder-length hair, parted in the middle. The man, they estimate, is about 5'7" to maybe 6'2", age around 30. Brown stains correlate with the wounds in the biblical description. So the scourging, the lance in the side, the crucifixion, nails through the wrist, ankles, feet area, the crown of thorns. So they claim you can see those on it. And I'll show an image after I describe this. It's supposedly laid on the body, and then it looks like it was folded over, of course, which is an interesting thing. And I noted this here. That is not supposedly the customary way of wrapping bodies.
Right.
It's contrary to actually the description given in the gospel, too. And there's actually other descriptions that say there's a separate piece that goes over the head.
The napkin. Yeah.
A napkin, and then there's another covering of the body. So, but then there's controversy about being that it was the Friday based on the description Kenny wrote. They had to get the body down, get it in the tomb quickly. There's some things that may have been done differently. There's 14 large triangular patches and 8 smaller ones by some nuns that repaired it after some fire damage in, I think it was 1532. Blood, where supposedly there's blood, it showed darker than the rest of the body image. It's easier to see with a black and white photographic negative, which I think that's the one most people are familiar with. Already talked about the twill. Each thread is about 80 to 200 micrometers, so it's pretty, it's typical thread. The inner cellulose is not colored. So the image, if you look at it and they've examined this, it's only on the very top fibers. And that's it. And it doesn't wrap around. It doesn't show any signs of diffusion. And they really, when you look at it, and some people said, oh, there's certain particles that could be from dyes and stuff. There was actually a real detailed chemical and biological analysis of all the stuff in there. And they finally determined that, well, if something like that was there, it's gone, and it's been long gone. So the idea is, where did the image still come from? And then the image area had fibers with background color, and the fibrils with more color, but with the same optical density. So what they're trying to make a point here is the image fibrils have a distribution that's not random. The density of the fibrils, or the image intensity, and the body sheet distance, it's actually a linear. When they mapped it out, there's a linear regression. The further away it got, the lighter the images got. And then they've done 40 chemical, physical, and biological, or they found 40 chemical, physical, and biological features, both micro and macro, that it's so far at this point, nobody has been able to 100% duplicate. So that's one of the reasons it still attracts a ton of attention. So I'll show a couple images, then we'll go through the timeline, and then maybe we can, I'll let you guys make whatever comments you have, and then maybe we can start talking about some of the issues, some of the challenges, how the image may have been formed. This is from National Geographic, which I think, Kenny, you said you ended up buying as well as I did. It's from June 1980. Volume 157, number 6. It's got one of those really awesome fold-out sections that we used to all love as kids. When you got the National Geographic,
centerfold
in a nerdy science type of way.
There you go.
Yeah. So I captured that there. Let's see. I think here's one with the supposed negative, and maybe it's a good place to stop briefly and have Kenny kind of explain what they did here, being the resident photography expert.
So yeah, there was a brief period of time where it was on display, and it was the first time it was allowed to be photographed. Trying to see, I forget the date. I didn't have it written down. But the gentleman took long exposures at it. And for me, like, I understand why he took long exposures, because it is a faint object. It's faint image on there.
Was the first
okay. Yeah. But I want to also bring up that this when you do long exposures like this, it allows more light to enter the camera and thus hit the glass plate, because they were using a glass plate at the time, because apparently the story goes that when he held up the negative, he was so struck that he almost dropped it, which would have shattered the plate. So when you're using a long exposure, you're definitely going to have more contrast, much more contrast. So understand that the image that we're looking at, the black and white image that we're looking at, is not what you would see in real life.
This is what you would see on this part here.
You would see that on
even fainter
the plate. Yeah. But it would be faint. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. You would have much less contrast, because I also read reports where the alleged blood stains are much more red in person than you see in any of the photographs, which is, that's good.
This is an image they took, normal picture, when they did the big article in 1980.
Yeah. So you're some of the things that kind of stand out is, they took a long exposure. I see some things that stand out, like there's fading. There's fading along the edges, which is a problem. We can talk about that when we get into like the cloth being wrapped around, because you mentioned that that proper burial would not wrap a body like this, where it started at the feet, went underneath, came over the head, and then came back down to the feet. One of the things that stand out is that you don't see the top of the head. You see the front face, you see the face, and you see a front dead-on image, 2D image, just like we're looking at each other now. But you don't see the continuation of the top of the head right here until you get to the back. So that's missing, which could have bubbled, to be fair, when you lay it over. But proper burial would have the body should have been cleaned first. It should have been washed. Then it would be wrapped, and then your myrrh and your aloes would be tucked into the folds of that wrapping. And then there was a napkin that they called it that was fastened to the chin and went to the head, the top of the head, that went over the face. And just from those descriptions, from the biblical descriptions and just basic Jewish custom of burial, you wrap a sheet around the body. This is not how it would be. This is perfectly flat. There are no wrinkles. If you wrap a body, it would be all over the place. Have you ever tried to wrap a body? You don't have to tell me.
As your attorney, as your also attorney, I advise both of you not to answer that
question.
It is never going to be this flat. It just can't. But I'm getting off topic. You wanted to stop.
Yeah, I mean, I think they actually try to show how they tried to attempt to replicate wrapping it like that.
And then, like, that image in that magazine does not match what we see on the shroud.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I read that tries to counter that at all is because they were in a hurry. Getting late on a Friday, got to get that body off the cross, got to get it in the tomb.
But even so,
and they didn't even supposedly prep it that well. So it's speculation, because nobody, that's not really. And it doesn't match the scripture, though. If you're going to use that scripture,
exactly, it doesn't match it at all. And if there was an imprint, it would have been mentioned. That's something that's just too important. I don't understand why it wouldn't be mentioned. But even so, whether you washed the body or not, because I mean, you got to think the guy was up there for how many? Like 3 days, right? Something like that.
He was in the tomb for 3 days. He wasn't on the cross for 3 days.
Was it 3 days in the tomb? I thought it was overnight.
Yeah, on the third day he rose again.
Oh,
You're
I thought that was the prophecy.
No, he rose. Supposedly, he rose on that Monday after the weekend.
So he's up there. He's on the cross, sweating, bleeding. He's probably dirty, to be honest. I mean, because the guy did have clothes. He had some kind of clothes on because it talks about the soldiers taking his clothes when he's dead. But he's going to be dirty, and even if they clean him or they don't clean him, when you still wrap around your clean linens around him, it's going to smear. It's going to smudge. Right. There's just no way around it.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. It's those type of things that you really need to dive in and think about, because there's always arguments to counter all of it, but it's kind of funny because sometimes people say, okay, we got to take what's written in the Bible. That's it. That's what happened.
Right. Literal.
But then now you find discrepancies, and then it's like, well, maybe not. But yeah, I mean, that part it's been debated a lot. So yeah. Anyway, so let's get through the background here.
Okay.
It's a lot. And I think I'm just going to point out a couple things here. There was one reference potentially to the 1st century that it may have been in Palestine. It contains a passage of the Hebrew gospel where it reports the shroud was given to a servant of a priest, but they can't confirm that. Then there was a mention in 1203, a crusader mentioned a shroud shown every Friday in Constantinople. The face of Christ was noted. Then the first record of it was 1353.
Right.
When it was revealed by Geoffrey de Charnay of Liry, France.
Yes. Ooh, he did better than me.
And then that person decided it'd be cool to put it on display in 1357. I suppose if I thought it was what it's supposed to be, I'd probably put it on display too. Right. In 1390, the local bishop of Troyes, they said that they found an artist that said they were responsible for it, but I find it funny. Nobody ever says the name of the artist or even says much more on that.
So I can add a little bit to that. You're correct, because that caught my attention. I have the letter that was written and the translation for it, and I read through this, and it was very difficult, mind you, because the way they spoke, oh my God.
It's a little difficult.
But there is mention that they found the guy that allegedly painted it, that he was a very clever painter and this and that, and it was forged, and it's actually mentioned 2 or 3 times in that letter. But the reason it caught my attention was exactly what you said. It's anonymous. There's no mention of who this artist is, and that bothers me. I would love to find the culprit, but when you're not giving me a name,
I kind of dismiss that. Then I'm kind of like, well, there's no name.
I mean, I wouldn't dismiss it entirely. It's still, I mean, if we're going to dismiss things just because we don't have a record of it, then everything gets thrown out.
But it's funny though that even back then, the Pope Clement, the 7th, they said, okay, but it's a representation.
Right. And I think that because of the time, there was other forgeries. This wasn't the only one. There was other forgeries that were going around that were similar to this. It just happened that this one had the backing of a knight that wanted to build a church, and that'll do it, better than your backstreet peddler, trying to sell off something. So, but I'm with you on that. It's something still to keep in mind, but I can't use it as any kind of evidence because we don't have a name.
Yeah, I'd say I also had the Pope Clement. But I had that he allowed the veneration of it, but
correct. But I
but
had to say it was a representation.
Yeah, forbid any claims of its authenticity as the actual shroud.
Yep. So moving on, then in 1453, Marguerite, granddaughter of Charnay, gave it to Louis, the Duke of Savoy. Duke Louis built a special church for it in Chambéry, the Saint Chapel. 1506, Pope Julius authorized the veneration of the shroud as a true relic of Jesus. 1532, a fire, and this will be important in some of the analysis they do later. There was a fire where molten silver dripped on it, charred the corners, it left water stains. 1534, the Chambéry nuns restored by sewing patches on the front. 1578, this is when it was moved to Turin in Italy at the Renaissance Cathedral of San Giovanni Battista. In 1683, there's the Chapel for the Holy Shroud. 1694, the linen was replaced with a black material. So some of the repairs they did were replaced with the black material. In 1869, it was changed again. There was a lining with crimson silk that was added to it. And these things I'm reading because they become a little more important when people start arguing, well, maybe the carbon dating wasn't right. There's different fibers at different times, and you got to get the right amount of, or get the right part of it. So these are things that people throw up as, potential obstacles to refute things carbon dating. And then 1898 was the first photo that Kenny talked about. 1931, public showing, more pictures. 69 and 73, team of scientists and experts examined it pretty carefully. 1978, another public showing with UV photos. 1978, Umberto II, former king of Italy, head of House of Savoy, allowed the full scientific examination on October 8th, 1978. 30 American and European scientists with about 6 tons of equipment came in to work on that, which that just sounds like a fucking awesome time. That would have been
fun to be there.
1983, it was moved from the House of Savoy to the Catholic Church after Umberto died. The Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin. In 1998, Pope John Paul called it a distinguished relic and a mirror of the gospel, but he did not say it was an authentic image or shroud or due to Jesus. He did not say that. 2002, the Holy Shroud had been restored. There was an intervention. The Chambéry nun patches were removed. The length of cloth was expanded by removing some of the patches. And there was reinforcing cloth sewn onto the back. So you can't see that back image anymore. Faint image of the body found on the back in 2004. And that's when they didn't discover the image on the back until 2004, when they removed that so they could do some more analysis and work on it. And then 2013, March 30th, images of the shroud were streamed. Pope Francis would not say it's real. It's an icon of a scourged and crucified. That's all that he would say. And then 2015, April 19th to June 24th, it was put on display again. So it's been on display a couple times, a couple different areas, but for the most part, I think they keep it kind of hidden and covered up and protected. And I think, if I remember right, it's in an argon or nitrogen gas filled container now, kept in the
dark. A lot, while listening to a lot of that, it brought up the question for me, like, how did they, much earlier on, like the 13, 1400s, even 15, maybe 1600s, like, how did they protect it? How did they store it? How did they keep it from other people getting to it?
That's one of the they think the image was probably a lot sharper back then too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it was brighter.
Faded considerably, because I'll have some towards the end that to me is quite interesting when they figured out exactly how they think through the chemical analysis of what that image is made from. But what caused the image? there's a lot of ways you can make what I'm going to talk about later. There's a lot of ways you could do that, but actually how that was done, that's still, they really don't know yet.
Yeah.
So, all right. Anyway, so I'll shoot it back to Kenny for any other comments or thing you want to bring up.
My biggest gripe, I think, with this being what many claim it is. So again, like I've checked into the church, the Catholic Church does not say that this is the image of Jesus. It's not saying that. And when it says it can be venerated or that it's a holy relic, that does not mean it's the image of Jesus or that it's actually from Jesus. I mean, when venerate it means great respect or reverence. So you're allowed to give something reverence, which is a separate issue, because if we go to the 10 Commandments, that's still a no-no. Like the original telling of the 10 Commandments. Anyway, but even a holy relic is defined as, and I'm totally cheating off my cheat sheet here, a tangible reminder of faith and a connection to saints or something else like that. So it's doesn't mean it's actually something from the person it's attributed to. It's more of a reminder. But the biggest gripe here is that there is 1,300 years where we have no record. We really don't have any provenance at all.
It's speculative at best, because I think
it's at best.
Yeah. And it traces it way back to early times. But even the scholars that have studied this and history, it's a lot of speculation, a lot of leaps of faith. See what I did there?
That's a good one. That's a good one. But yeah, I mean, we have a first recording. Like we have a mention of it. I think you said in like 12 something. But we don't know if that's it. Like the provenance starts.
There's at least 14 of them around that time that I read somewhere. There's at least 14 other ones. And what else started happening in the 1300s?
Right.
Stigmata, which we covered on our show.
Yeah. So a lot of this is, I mean, it's hard for me to accept something when we have 1,300 years where we have no idea where it was or where it came from. And we don't have a record of where it came from. We simply don't know. It's just there. And it's cool. It's a cool looking relic. I mean, it's really cool looking, but that's my biggest gripe, I think. I have a lot of gripes, but that's my biggest one. Like I'm really about like knowing where something came from. And when you can't, how do we know I think I refer back to my earlier point. Like the only reason this is getting more attention is because it was a knight that brought it forth and wanted to build a church to house it. And I think that gave it reputation. But, that's just my opinion.
Dave mentioned something like what else was going on around the 1300s, and it just kind of, I Googled it. So was the Black Death, 1346 to 1353. Now, does that, I don't know what that means for the validity of the shroud, but yeah. But
damn it, Bob.
As a motivation for something to believe in and have a lot of faith in, and to support the culture and have what do I want to say, like reinforce hope.
Right.
That would be something that you would want to see, would be something that was actually on the body of Jesus Christ. And if times look rough, a lot of people died, that they would have comfort in knowing that it's real. We can see it. It's tangible. People have it. And therefore it's proof that we will have a place to go to that's better.
Yeah. I think a lot of this has to do with that kind of stuff. And like when we touched on the new rules for judging miracles and stuff like that, like part of that, our discussion was about how like they're not going to come out and actually say, well, sometimes they're going to say, no, it's not, this is not real. But sometimes if they're not sure, they're going to let it ride. And I see that here. And it's kind of like, all right, you know what? We're not going to say it's, I mean, that's the big red flag to me. We're not going to say it's real. And I think that's actually good. It's a red flag that they're not backing it, but it's also, I think, good because they're saying, we don't know. You know, we don't know if it is or not. And so we're not going to say it. But
it seems like more work they do, it becomes more complicated and more
yes,
scary.
and
I mean, you look at some of this in-depth chemical and biological analysis,
and that's where
it gets you from I don't believe it at all to maybe to back to I don't believe it all to most scientists are like, we're not really sure how it was formed, bottom line.
And that's getting into my overthinking statement from earlier. Like there's so many tests being done, and we're looking at it, everyone's looking at it from their own perspective, and they're looking at it. Some people see different dyes. Some people see ingredients of certain paint that was used at the time. Other people see traces of blood. Some people see biological matter. We're coming at it from all different perspectives. Instead of coming together and really getting the data big, I think everyone's approaching it from their own, and some are fast tracking to publish.
1,300. Even if you want to, even if you could say it went back earlier than that, right. How many people have touched it, handled it?
Exactly.
To get DNA and blood. The one thing I did find in what is this? The chemical investigation of the Shroud Turin by the Canadian Society for Forensic Sciences journal, 1981. They at least from what I read and seen the data and how they did the tests, it is blood. And there's protein, there's serum there too. But they said, whose blood is it? We don't know.
Right.
And they said it could have been added. An artist, they even admitted an artist, if you're going to try to make this look more authentic, probably going to dab a little of your own blood on there.
Right. And I mean, I've seen,
but to say,
blood art.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I've seen blood art. Like people have used, they've taken they're drawn their own blood and made art out of it. But I mean, yeah, you're right. I think that is a possibility. And I mean, and again, and it also comes down to what's being tested. So I don't know the exact size of some of these blood trails. I don't like the blood trails. I don't like the way they look. Personally, just again, they should be smeared. If they were dried, they would be brown, not red.
They talked about that a little bit because they said it looked like a lot of them were due to coagulated blood because of where it would have touched, and then the serum, protein serum, would have kind of oozed out around it, which is what they claim they see in there.
Okay.
I like the idea as well. Is this knight might have just come across this dug up body that was dug up for theft to see what was in the tomb. He found the shroud. It might be from an actual body. And it's just not the body of Jesus.
To get there though, that's the question.
I think so. We can jump into this where
we can talk about the image formation. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, kind of. Because I think there's going to be a problem with what has happened to it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why That's why I did such an extensive history and timeline.
Right.
Because the people went as far as saying, "Oh, we found pollen from Israel and Palestine." It's like, well, the thing's been floating around, and pollen goes everywhere. And the guy who did the pollen analysis went to those places to collect pollen samples to compare it against. So it's like, okay, biologically, that's interesting. That just tells me that if you have an old piece of linen you drag around the world or around Europe in the Middle East and winds are blowing for, 2 centuries, you're probably going to have some pollen on it.
We have, I'm scrolling up. I didn't realize, like the timeline that I have is 47 pages long.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. But I'll just between.
So you're all welcome for us summarizing it.
Between the year 1473 and 1478. So it went from, oh my God, I'm going to butcher these names. Vercelli to Turin, from Turin to Ivrea to Moncalari. From there to back to Ivrea.
I'm not the only one.
It went across the Alps back to Chambéry. And then it was at, oh my God, this actually says ravioli.
It was back in ravioli days.
Susa Avigilano ravioli. Ravioli, sorry. And then it was also exhibited at Pinerolo.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 places in those a couple years. And who knows, we're talking 1400s. I doubt there was good protection or preservative.
That was kind of the part I was talking about before, was like, how was it protected, how it was preserved.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I hate to be this simple, but what if someone like botched it? What if someone in between like totally caught it on fire and was like, shit, now we have to make one.
It was on fire in 1500.
It was.
But I mean, like,
it almost burned up,
like,
with silver melting on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like completely burn it up. And they were like, we're going to die. We're going to lose our heads if we don't come up with something. And then they were like, Bob, lay down. We're going to roll this shroud over you with ink.
Right.
Here, bleed on it.
I mean, it was in one of the things that I think the last paper that you sent us, Dave, that was about the X-ray, the wide X-ray.
Yeah.
So there was a couple comments in there that caught my attention. And one was that they put linen in a oven and baked it at 200 degrees.
Yeah.
200 degrees Celsius for a half hour. And I was like, all right, I guess they're going with the famous fire that happened.
Yeah. They were trying I think they're trying to see the effect of a heat flash on the fiber degradation.
So I guess my issue with that was that it was way too low of a temperature. Because I looked up average temperature of orange flames, and that's in a fire. We're talking about a church that burned down. I mean, and this was inside of a case that had silver on it. So the melting point of silver is 961 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
So over 700 degrees more than what they were testing it at.
But I think that one of the points they did that for is if it really, because the idea is the heat or the fire would cause it to degrade more, the fibers. And this wax test they did, it should have shown it as being older then.
So I guess that's the issue I have, is that we're not sure. We're taking a lower test variable.
It wasn't to simulate the fire. I think it was more to simulate what heat would do to fiber structure, because this test, while it's interesting, it's not one of the main things they use this type of technology for, is fibers.
Exactly. I have other issues with the I have issues with the authors. One of the they got an earlier paper retracted because they didn't divulge some information, specifically like where they got the threads from or how they got the threads.
Yeah, this one they at least went through and described where they got all the samples from.
Did they?
Yep.
Where is that?
In all the references, and the fibers is on page 861, table 1. Sample name, linen sample description, fabric, year of manufacture obtained by dating, and then they have the bibliographic references, so you can go back and look at it.
So yeah, they're not telling you. They're telling you the area where it was, but the problem is that they're not telling you how they extracted it or if it was given to them. Because that was the problem with the other paper that got retracted, is because they were given the thread. They didn't actually pull it from the artifact.
Well, I think some of these were from some of the supposed tape samples, I thought. Or maybe that was another paper. I don't fucking remember.
It did, because I looked through it. And because as soon as I saw that retraction problem, I was like, all right, well, let me look through this again. And see.
I mean, it's a problem, but this one made it through. So I would think if they had a prior one that was retracted, they probably took a pretty damn close look at this one.
We'll see. I mean, well, it's a different outlet.
Yeah.
But
anyway, so let's talk about the what people propose as far as how it was formed. Then we can dig into that a little bit. So some people say, and a lot of these Kenny can cover, painting, medieval, Grissi, I think is how you pronounce it, method. It's a linen with a tempera paint, unusual transparent features, acid pigmentation, which would actually explain something later of the oxidation of the fibers and the coating on the front of it, or only on the top of it. That's one. Medieval photography, but I think that's more or less ruled out because the subject would have had been exposed to sunlight for
months. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
3 days in the dark probably didn't do it. Dust transfer technique. I think you've already talked about number 5 a little bit already. And then you can explain maybe what you did with trying to make a Shroud of Kenny mugshot.
Oh, that's got to be that's definitely a t-shirt, Kenny. Come on.
And then the Maillard reaction, it's not enzymatic. It's a non-enzymatic browning, which basically it involves an amino acid and a reducing sugar. The cellulose fibers there coated with things like starch and various sugars and impurities, and then the amines from the decomposing body could potentially have caused an image to form. However, the problem is, they don't really find a whole lot of signs of decomposition on the shroud. There is protein. I pulled this from an earlier paper, but they did find some protein based on the analysis, some of the chemical analysis they did. And then again, only supposedly 3 days to resurrect. There's not going to be a whole lot of stuff coming off the body at that time. Radiation process. This is an interesting one. At the moment of resurrection, radiation burst, a corona discharge, plasma in the air caused changes in the linen sample. No effects seen in the image fibers of the shroud. They can't detect that as being part of it. However, they did use a UV laser, and they were able to recreate that. I had 2 articles where they were able to use certain pulses of a certain wavelength of a UV laser. They could get almost the exact same coloration and just on the top of the fibers that they did it with. Some people speculate, okay, well, maybe it's psychokinetically imprinted, supernatural. And then the way I summarize it is there's really 3. You lump these together. Humans either did it, it's a natural process that transferred something, or supernatural. That's kind of the buckets these things fall into at the end of the day.
Right.
So I don't know, Kenny or Tim, if you, I don't know, maybe Tim, you can comment and Kenny can go get his Shroud of Biddle and kind of explain what you did there and show that. So Tim, what do you got? What do you think?
Yeah, I'll be right back.
I think it's probably going to fall into forgery. I don't know. Honestly, I understand. Again, it just kind of goes back to me with the whole, like, how do they keep it, how they protect it, how they keep people away from it. Was it guarded constantly? I don't know. The psychic and, supernatural. That's interesting. I think worth reading and learning about, but in the end, like, how, what you can come up with. Yeah. It's what you can retest.
If it was that, what if it's a supernatural or a psychokinetic alteration of a natural process? How would you know that the natural process that it used to create the image, even if they did it supernaturally, how do you know what it was caused by?
Exactly.
You don't.
You don't. Yeah.
You don't. Okay. So basically what I did, and if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah.
I'm going to share here. Window. That one. Okay. So this is me using this bust of Darwin because I didn't want to do it to my own face, but I used this bust, and that's a test that I did just to make sure I had enough linen. And then I began applying makeup, tan makeup to it. It's a liquid base. I don't know what they call it because I don't put makeup on, so I don't know what they call it. But my wife had extra and she gave it to me, so that's what it ended up being. Which later on you'll see, like I panicked because I think I sent you guys a picture. I was
You did.
This is from
I
work.
hope nobody from your
I don't know
work
if I
watches
can get
this
off.
show before you talk anymore.
So there, I poured it on all over it, and then dabbed it around. I put the linen on top of it, and on this one, I pressed it in like that, just to see what would happen. And what happened when I pulled it off? These are just, I know, it's pretty cool. But so this is the linen. When I pulled it off, you can actually see like the nose is right there, right in the middle. But that's what happens. If you have blood, sweat, whatever, actually I can close this out. Or let me see. Nope. Oh, there it is. That was me trying to wash it. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
It's not
That was the old shit text we got.
No, it's not coming off. Foundation. Thank you, Bob. It's amazing that you know what that is. Anyway, so yeah, this is the result of that. And again, that was pressed in, and
doesn't look like that.
This is what I'm talking about. You know, like if blood, sweat, dirt, oils, which according to what I was reading, the oils aren't put on the body. They are the myrrh and the aloes are put.
Which I do have myrrh and aloes and all kinds of stuff. So if you want to experiment, I'll send you some.
Well, that's
I didn't get around
again,
to it.
like what I was reading is that's tucked into the folds of the sheet. It's not actually put on the body. It's
correct.
It's actually the folds of the clothes, because traditionally, what they're supposed to do is they put the body in their favorite clothing. So the clothes that they wore that they loved the most, that's what they put them in. Then they wrap them in sheets. So again, given the time restraints and all that stuff, it probably wasn't done. And I'm sure the clothes that he had, according to the description, the soldiers all divvied up. So
bastards. So
that was one. This one I did the other way, where I wrapped it around this way, because that's really what most of the descriptions and diagrams I see show. So that is the same face. And again,
Tim, this is an ink blot test.
I know.
I see an ancient fish, like a fossil.
That's actually pretty good. Yeah, it does look like that. And then I had one, and this is probably the faintest of all. Not much there, but that was just on the face, and all I did was lightly lay it down. I didn't press it in. I just laid it over the face like this as it was laying down, and that's all. Yeah. So those are my experiments for that.
Okay.
So I guess like the idea that it was wrapped, and any of this either transfer by dirt, dust, oils, washing, whatever, blood, wouldn't give you an image like this. It's just not possible, because you have to, in order to get all the features, you have to push it in. And once you start pushing in on either side of the nose, it pulls from the side. There's also a picture that I have, because this actually this demonstrates it really well. Where is it? Where I put up. Oh, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to share this again. Maybe.
Hopefully.
There it goes. Okay. For a second, I didn't want to. All right. So this is a ruler that I have measuring the face. You see it's about 8 centimeters wide. And then when I go to the next, measure the image. So this, when I put this cloth on the face, I marked where the ears were. So these blue marks that you see here on either side, right there, are where the ears were. And now you see that the image is spread out to 20 centimeters. So more than double what the actual front on view would be, which is what we get in the Shroud. So if there's any kind of contact like that, that can't be the process, because it wouldn't give you the image.
Right.
The other thing I'll comment on is that if it was the radiation type, where there was like a sudden burst of radiation or something, again, because of the way the sheets are wrapped, you would not have a clear image like this, because it's still wrapped around the face, and you would have the image if it came out in straight lines. That we're talking about radiation. If it came out in straight lines, you would still have wrinkles and you would have distortions on it, just because of the nature of the face and how it's wrapped with a loose cloth.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I know there was a theory. I don't know if it was on your list about like vaporous transfer. So the only problem I have the big problem I have with that is that vapors do not travel in a straight line.
No,
so you wouldn't be able to have that, and you wouldn't get any detail. There would be no sharpness to the image. So that's all I got.
Okay.
I think.
All right.
Let me stop sharing. Yeah.
So then I'll go back to this part. So this, to me, when I got into some of this, a little interesting and things to think about, because they've been able to at least somewhat put some doubt on some prior work. They've also been able to show that they can recreate at least not a whole image. None of these can still create that whole image.
Right.
So there was an argon fluoride laser that they used at 193 nanometers wavelength. Yeah. So what they could do is they could essentially match the color and the hue of what they saw on the Shroud, and it would just hit those top fibers. That's it. So that is interesting, but they make this case that oxygen has a strong interaction with the vacuum UV radiation. So it'd be quickly absorbed by the air. So the penetration depth is only a few microns, which explains why it would just be on the surface. The problem is that ionizing particles and electromagnetic radiations, they make the color, but as they interact with the air, it's not, they don't think it would be possible. If it was a UV source like this, even if it was a laser, they don't think it would have been able to create the entire image. So that's one thing. The second thing that was interesting, the carbon dating, which some people say, nope, that's it. It's been carbon dated. It isn't just the fiber analysis stuff, the wax that they're saying they dated it further back. But if you look at it, actually took a court case to get the raw data for the radiocarbon dating, which to me, that raises a red flag. Why is somebody hiding? And I think was it museum in England, London, somewhere. Why do you need a court case to release raw data? Right. And this was published in Nature, the radiocarbon dating. And what they found out is that, I guess, with carbon dating, you want to have homogeneity. It has to be very similar data, and it should be similar between the three different locations that did the dating. But they found out that that wasn't so. And they actually had trimmed out some outliers, and they did some other things with the data. So to me, it's just kind of weird. Why, if you're scientists and you publish something in Nature, why are you trying to withhold the raw data for somebody else to analyze?
Right.
And that builds a whole lot of speculation, and people start doubting it, and it just adds fuel to the fire. So they finally have to get a freaking court order and get it released. And now they look at it, and another publication came out, and they're like, yeah, there's problems with the data. So they're not saying it doesn't mean it doesn't date to the 1400s. What they're saying is it's probably got to be redone.
Yeah.
Because if they look at this, so they removed outliers. They used, supposedly there's different fibers, different color, cotton versus flax, the repair jobs. Some people say the fire may have caused some problems with the carbon dating, but they're not anybody who was serious about it didn't think that was a huge issue. But the other thing that was interesting when you look at this, that there's other types of dating that they've done. So they did FFT, infrared spectroscopy and this attenuated total reflectance, it dates it to 300 BC plus or minus 400 years, which would put it at about the right time, and then 200 plus or minus 500. There's some other multi-parametric method based on all these different parameters. They found it was 480 plus or minus 400 years. Then they also look at this loss of this molecule, this vanillin, in the lignin fiber, and that dates it from 1300 to 3000. And then there's another analysis they did that dates it to 692. And then the one they did with the wax, they think it dates it to 54 to 74 or 55 to 74. So there's all kinds of, there's different dates flying around. None of these match up. That's why I think you continue to see people question it.
Right.
They don't really know how old it is, I guess is what they're saying, is we have not conclusively determined how old it is.
I think.
Okay. So completely ignorant question, which is typical. Is it possible that because it's been handled in a lot of different, could they just be getting different samples of where someone either touched it, sneezed on it, bled on it, sweat on it from different times?
Remember all the repairs they did through the years? They could be getting original fiber, repaired fiber, leftover fibers dragged through the sackcloth that somebody was wearing when they ran off with it, and
any type of contaminant.
That's the problem.
I think it really goes back to what's allowed. So even I believe with the tests in 78 or 83, that they were told where they could take samples from. You just can't go randomly. And I think that's a big issue because that's limiting. And again, if you're allowed to go in one section and test it, and that's what you're approved of. And then later on, it's saying, people were saying, and rightly so, if that's the case, that, oh, that's a patch job or that's a newer section, then who's at fault? You know, honestly, I think it's the original people that are in charge of it because they only allowed you to have that part.
But they're saying they need to redo probably all the carbon dating.
Yes.
And then they could actually do this wax method, and they could send it to multiple labs because it's non-destructive. You don't have to destroy the sample.
Right.
So you could have 10 different labs run the analysis on let's say you take 100 tape samples off of the shroud. And then you could have a better data set to make a determination there.
And I would even argue, like, the tape samples are basically, as I understand it, that's basically you take tape and you go on the surface.
Peel off
you peel off. Yeah, I think that's a horrible idea in this case.
Maybe.
Because of all the stuff that we're talking about, about it traveling around, about it being handled by who knows what and how so. Different ways of storing it. The fire, the dousing with water. I mean, that's a big deal too. It was in a box in a building that was on fire that reached a point beyond melting silver.
Yep.
So we don't know. We have no idea how hot it actually got. And then they doused it with water. So who the fuck knows what was in that water? Where's 1500?
That's why and then the way they actually processed the flax back in those days, they would actually put it in water and let it sit for a couple days.
Yeah. And
it would pick up different like iron and other things that are in the water. So even some of that analysis is tough.
Donna had a good idea. We should take a pee break and actually come back. Because I think we're going to go a little bit longer.
Yeah, because I want to talk about something that I thought was pretty interesting from how it could have been formed. And then we got a couple questions and then we'll closing remarks. So
all right.
Let me see if I think we still have a break. You ready? I don't remember how long it is. It's 2 minutes and 27 seconds.
Oh, Dave, you're going to set a record that I can't beat.
I'm going to try not to fuck it up. All right, we'll be back.
Don't fuck it up.
And we're back. Everybody made it back.
I love how Dave and I stayed and focused, and then Kenny was just like, "Fuck it, if it breaks, it breaks. I gotta go pee."
Break, man.
He
I
was
gotta go.
gone.
Hey, my whole brain is programmed that this show is an hour.
I know we're going back to the old ways here. Damn.
Dave and I, we stayed at least 20 seconds going.
Like, yeah, maybe we should pee.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not taking
All right.
this.
So, Tim, anything before we move
No,
into
no,
something
yeah.
I think was interesting, at least to me?
I
went in a totally different direction than you guys. My closing will be a little different too, but maybe a little fun.
Okay.
I want to share again, and I want to show one of the aspects that I'm talking about here.
Yep.
So this is it's a hyper, what was it? A hyper realistic model of the not just model of what we see in the Shroud. This was an artistic rendition. It's actually a body. It's not a real body, but it's when you see it. I'm going to show you the next image, and you'll see what I mean. But it's a hyper realistic model of what we see in there, and I want you to see like this sheet that's draped over it. Notice how it's draping. There's folds in it. There's folds all over the face here. There's going to be gaps. There's negative space here where the sheet is resting on the tip of the nose and not getting into the eyes. It's not getting the inside of the cheekbone or around. It would just give the peak of the cheekbone. But most importantly, down here, like this is what they say is the shape, how it was sitting. Another thing about Jewish burials is that the hands and ankles were bound. They were bound together so that I don't know why, but that's what they did. And that was before they wrapped it in a sheet. But there's no mention of that at all. But again, underneath here, underneath the knees, like there's no cloth that would be touching that at all. Like from the butt all the way down to the heel, especially with the one leg where the foot's up. There would be nothing there. There would be no image to transfer onto the sheet. Yet when we look at the Shroud, there it is. So, and I'll show you the next image. It's freaky. So he's all covered. There's no nudity. Don't freak out, people. But that was on display, I think 2 years ago. It was put on display. It's not a real person. When you get close up, it looks like I was waiting seriously for the dude to open his eyes. But all the hairs are there. Everything is there exactly how they envision Jesus would look. And also, like, again, with the sheet that would come down over here, there would be gaps all here. And I think it would be more of an impression on the back because you would have the full weight of the body.
This would be assuming though he still had rigor mortis, right? It was locked in this position and things hadn't relaxed yet and he laid flat.
According to the artist and the people the museum, this is an exact rendition of what you're supposed to be seeing on the Shroud. That's what I said. I was like,
I think I would have flattened them down and said, "This is an exact rendition of what you're seeing on the Shroud."
Right.
But that's just me.
It just doesn't. It doesn't like this. Should be more of an impression on the Shroud than anything up here. Especially the way it is, especially with the beard. I mean, I don't think you would get as much facial detail, even if you did it. No, you wouldn't. You just wouldn't. You just wouldn't. All right.
Interesting.
There you go. Now I'm done. Moving on. Tim?
I was looking for just some information because Kat Mack had said something much earlier about what happens to the body post when death starts, and the bloating. I don't know the process, so I don't know what they did to prepare his body as far as like the fluids and stuff. But there's a lot of bloating, a lot of things bursting at some point. There would be a lot of fluids coming out of places. It just, that was, I didn't really think about that too much until I saw that. But I don't know how they prepared. Like, I don't know if they did drain the body. I don't know what they did. I don't know if they would have drained the body.
No,
they would not have. Oh,
But there's a lot of things that come out.
I can say that the body would have been placed not in the tomb, but not on the ground. It would have been on a table.
Yep.
Like a stone table. And I'm assuming, I didn't see any descriptions, but I'm assuming there would be another rock or some kind of formation to prop the head up instead of laying it flat. That's the only explanation I could think of why the head is up in this image.
Yeah, and the other thing, somebody made a comment. They found, some mummies in Egypt and some other burials where they almost like rolled up cloths and put them on both sides of the head, which would explain the potential type of image, the 3D part of the image, or why it looks like it was made out of, kind of like with bas relief.
Even with that
situation,
the bas relief would still have the tip of the nose and not much detail at all around here, especially if they're coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also the problem with the blood from the forehead. Because he has so much hair that you would not see blood flow like that. It would be matted in the hair.
Yep.
So okay. All right. Okay. That's good. Yeah.
All right. So one thing that one of these chemical investigations of the Shroud papers brought up, which was interesting, is that they more or less are determining that the image, the yellowing of the fibers, is due to oxidation and dehydration of the fibers. That causes a conjugation, and fibers are polysaccharide structures. This is a whole lot of chemistry and biochemistry here, but it basically shows you what happens is if you oxidize, it changes the structures in the side chains a little bit. And actually, when you oxidize linen, polysaccharides, long chain molecules like this, what you see is it does go from white to yellow, because it becomes the carbonyl groups on the side become a chromophore, which is a color. It gives it the color.
Okay.
And, that's premature aging, where you can see these carbon-carbon double bonds or something, and then it leads to the coloration. And the analysis they did on the yellow fibers does show that that's exactly what's going on. Now, the question is, what caused that? Could it be combination of the myrrh and the aloes and something with the body, or if it was recreated, does somebody use some sort of substance that would cause that reaction and that formation and the color change? And then you certainly wouldn't detect any pigment or paint or anything, because it's not that. It's causing basically a chemical reaction. So they've shown they actually find those groups. They think that they're pretty sure at this point through the chemical analysis that's what's causing the coloration. And again, the interesting thing though is the coloration. It's all the fibers have the same color, but it's the density of the fibers that causes the darker, because they find this throughout pretty much all of it. It's the yellowing color. And something like this would even fade over time if it's exposed to light and elements. So to me, it was pretty interesting explanation. It provides a natural process without saying somebody painted it, faked it, used UV or anything. It could have been simply a combination of the linen, the oxidation and dehydration caused by something. That somebody, even lemon juice or other things could have caused the reaction. So to me, that was pretty interesting that they actually got to the point where they're like, we're pretty sure this is, through the analysis, this is what's going on with the color of the fibers.
What about vinegar? I wonder.
as a
I'm
base.
curious.
I mean, they even said a lot of the pigments and stuff that they would have maybe used back in the day, especially if
Right.
it was like a particle of a pigment, it could cause an oxidation reaction.
Right. Right.
So, and that might be why you're still seeing the image, but they're not detecting, or they're fairly confident, at least at this point in 2,000 years later, they can't detect the actual pigments.
Right. Be clever. And again,
Pretty
like
damn clever. I don't
it's
care how it was formed, but if they did it that way back in the day, that's pretty freaking clever.
but like that makes me think, like, is it clever like overall, or is it clever to us because we're not in that time? You know, that might have been for an artist, and I'm just speculating, for an artist that might be normal. You know, like I love art. I've done some painting here and there, but if I go into an artist studio, I'm not going to know half the shit that they use.
Yeah.
Or the techniques. And I mean, I'm a product of modern times. If we go back, say either like 1200, 1300s, or anywhere like plus or minus 400 or 500 years, like I'm still not going to know what kind of materials they're using, and it's not going to be modern material. It's going to be something else. So yeah, there's no telling. And again, we also go back to the 1300 undocumented years where we have no idea where, what, or what's going on with it. So no idea.
All right. Well, that's everything I had.
Let me see what else I got.
We got some questions too Tim, anything else to add?
No, I was just kind of looking. The idea of coloring was very interesting to me. Thinking about like learning about the beetles, crushing beetle shells. There was a lot of in very interesting ways, but it also made me think there was something about the color green at some point. The green dye was killing a lot of people, so I wanted to see what years green was killing.
Oh, Paris green.
Yep.
Yeah,
1830s and 1840s.
Remember that? Yeah, Victorian stuff, because they dyed a lot of clothing and people were getting sick.
Steph Rosa put this up. It looks like a negative image of 14th, 15th century painting. Someone could have done it. So take a look at this painting.
Oh, that's cool.
And then when you can get an app for your iPhone, there's an app for everything these days, and you can have it create a negative image. And when you do that, look at the detail that starts to pop out of that image when you do a negative of it. So the fact that it could be done artistically, easy. Or maybe they didn't even intend. They were just kind of making it like this, and then you take a negative, and it's like, oh, look at that. That's cool, because they wouldn't have comprehended probably a negative image in the 1300s.
Well, I mean, you gotta think. So, actually, if we can switch out, put the thing that I put up. So this is a picture of me, obviously, and one side's a negative, one side's the positive. But think of the medium that you're using.
Yeah.
So if you're using a light colored cloth, whether it's a white linen or what, you're not going to use white in order to draw your picture. You're going to use a darker pigment. So like you can see in the negative here, my skin is dark, but still not as dark as the background, which is white. My hair comes out white in the negative, but it's definitely not white. My beard is pretty much the same color. That's
grayish white.
That's so funny. It's almost the same. But I mean, even my shirt, you can see the shirt, the darker. I mean, and that's what you're thinking about when you're doing these images. If you're going to, like, when I draw on paper, when most of us draw on paper or we paint, it's usually a white canvas. So in order to show an image, you can't use white. You can use white for highlights, but you have to use a darker color for contrast. So that's why, I mean, when the negative showed up, it showed a lot more detail. but again, it was a long exposure.
Yep.
Too. So it's going to take in a lot more light, a deeper penetrating kind of image. And just knowing that it wasn't made to be a negative. Like that's a modern day concept that's just gotten into our heads.
Yeah.
Like it was made to be a negative and we were supposed to do this. No, it wasn't.
Yeah. This is interesting. And last thing before maybe we jump into questions, this is, there's no doubt that this is a fake, but I was kind of hoping it was going to be it's at the art museum in Chicago, but it's not currently on display. I'm like, damn, would have loved to go and seen another one, but definitely you look at the difference. Certainly not anything like what we see in the Shroud of Turin.
But I wonder, like, given enough time, so this is dated from 1634.
Engraving, black and white silk. Hand editions in lead, on cream, satin weave, folded.
So I mean, imagine something like that.
Yeah.
With 400 or 300 years of or 200 years or 300 years, whatever, of being handled, being in a fire, this and that. How much would it fade? I mean, that is pretty bad. That is pretty bad. Never mind. Let's say if we had a better.
I don't think so. This one
is. Did you try to make
this
a negative? Did you try to make this a negative?
No, I can real quick though.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see what it
would
look
like. Talk among yourselves, and I'll.
Hi, Tim.
Negative.
Go ahead. You got something to say, Tim?
Well, I have. There's another shroud that's supposed to be. I was going to just kind of talk at the end. The Sidarium of Oviedo is another shroud that's supposed to be also that was accompanying the Shroud of Turin at the time of the wrapping, and it's also another one. But this was kept in Spain.
Okay.
And is considered an alternative or a complement to the actual shroud. SUDARIUM OVIEDO.
Okay, here, I'll show this to you.
All right.
I'm not gonna put it up there. Take too much time,
but that's spooky. I love the face. The face is really cool looking.
Creepy.
But you know what? Like that looks, to me, that looks better than the original. I mean, it's still
and everything, man.
It's still not a good, a good rendition. But I mean, and give it some time, give it a few, a couple centuries of fading and, being in fire and being handled and dirty water thrown onto it to put out the molten silver and stuff. Then, who knows?
So is there a technique to actually age something faster?
You can artificially age, I know, like documents, but there's still chemical tests that you can do to define those.
Find the age.
The agents. Yeah. Because we see it.
Heat will do it, especially with linens.
Yeah. And documents. They try to age documents. I just saw a commercial. I was looking up prop money. So movie prop money. Because I found long story. Anyway, but now I'm getting commercials on my YouTube channel of a company that does the best worn prop money available. So it looks like it's used. It doesn't look like it's, brand new in the pack, still wrapped. It like they wear it. They make it worn. And I was like, damn, like it looks good.
All you gotta do is try to put it in the damn soda machine down thing. It'll wear it down and it'll look like it's 20 years old in no time.
Shit, you go to a couple stores with kids that really don't care. You can get all kinds of stuff.
Oh, again, as both your attorneys, I advise you to shut the fuck up.
So with that being told, shut the fuck up, before we get to closing comments, which I'm hoping Tim will give us his spiel on what he all learned at the end here.
Yeah.
I don't think
kind of go rapidly through the questions.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
So, Kat, why would there be blood and no other body fluids? Either the blood was washed or it wasn't, and we all know what happens after you die. Well, at least
That's
from
the
what I
one.
saw, the chemical and biological analysis, they did find protein in serum there, and they did supposedly identify blood. But a lot of, I don't know. See, this gets into all kinds of problems. If you think it was only on the guy for 3 days, there isn't a whole lot of decomposition or other things that would have been found on it anyway. Or did the artist or somebody add something to it at some point to make it look a little more real, a little different? I don't know. But yeah, you would think if it rested on a body for a normal period of time, you should be able to detect things like amines and other urea and breakdown components from decomposition. But the argument people say who believe that this is what happened is he wasn't in there long enough for that to happen. That's my quick answer. Anybody else?
I agree. It just, according to the story, it was not long enough. But I understand where she's coming from, because there should be, like, anyone that dies like that, your muscles relax, your bladder goes, your bowels go. So why isn't there feces or something like that?
That did happen when he was hanging on the cross and died.
Right.
And then they clean him up. We don't know. Nobody.
Well, he's also, I mean, he's often depicted as having a loincloth on.
Yeah.
A covering, but that's not the case when he was, like, this shroud does not show any clothing. There's nothing there. But she made that comment as, he was
your bladder and colon evacuate when you die. Well, he died on the cross, and then they took him down. I think, I don't know how long it was after, but it was a couple hours probably.
Yeah. And I'm gonna flex my Dogma knowledge, because I love that movie, and say, like, that hill was supposed to be known as like, what was it, Gotham? And it's the shit hill. Because when they expired, people would everything would go down below on the ground. So and their diet probably made it more chunky. Not to get too graphic.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. If they cleaned them up, then there wouldn't be any blood. Well, it depends on how deep the wounds are too. You could clean the blood off, but if the wounds are still there, and that's one of the papers I read, they said something about, it wasn't really free flowing blood. It looked like clotted, coagulated blood, and then the serum was kind of coming out around it. But I don't know.
I would think the blood would have been dried by the time.
You would think.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. I missed the beginning. Was iron oxide used in any of the pigments? Yes, and they did find iron oxide, but they also found iron, and they think that the iron was not uniformly spread throughout the shroud based on the chemical analysis. They did find iron where the blood is, which would make sense. But the argument there was they did not find iron oxide everywhere. And what they thought were some of the potential particles still could have been, but they don't think that accounts for the majority of the iron or iron oxide that they found on the shroud.
Well, I tell you, if I get in trouble and someone looks at my search history, I'm like looking up what the body decomp and the temperatures and the.
So in the 1978 testing by McCrone, I think McCrone identified red iron oxide on the shroud fibers, dispersed rather sparsely in the body areas and much more abundantly in the blood areas.
Yeah, this one says iron oxide did not correlate with the visually observed image and cannot account for it.
Says in none of the control areas did we find the kind, and kind is in italics, of iron oxide that we found on all of the image areas. When I say the kind of iron oxide is common contaminant in the world. There's plenty of rust. There are plenty of iron oxide particles floating around on this table, blah, blah, blah. But the nature of the iron oxide on the shroud turned out to be very similar to an artist's pigment. Turned out to be the closest thing I could find was Venetian red. I was a little sorry that it wasn't turned red, but Venice was nice. In any case, the particles were very characteristic of an artist's pigment.
Yeah,
so that was in that test.
Yeah, the 1981 Canadian Society of Forensic Sciences journal, where they did a pretty in-depth chemical investigation. They're saying, yeah, there's iron oxide there, but it could be due to the way the linen was prepared by soaking it in the water. It could be due to some pigments, artist pigments, coloration, but again, it doesn't correlate with the image overall. So they're saying no, and there is blood that has. They think the iron there came from the blood.
What do you mean the linen was prepared in water?
There was something in here where, and I'll have to find it, where they would soak it in water for a. Let me see if I can find. You two talk. I'll see if I can find it. I know it's in here somewhere.
How you doing, Kenny?
I'm doing good, Tim. How are you?
Keep going.
Doing great.
Keep going.
It's good.
I'll find it.
It's
Otherwise,
good.
I can find it and send it to you later. But
yeah, that's fine. I'm curious. I didn't come across that, so I'm curious.
Yeah,
if it was soaked,
yeah. Sometimes
that would have
they
dispersed.
put it in like natural. Well, no, beforehand they would put to prepare a cloth as they're making it. They would put it in water for a long period of time
before it would be purchased.
Right.
Okay. All right.
And
never
I
mind
think that if that's true, and that's how they actually used to do it back in those days, they're saying that a lot of these little trace minerals that they're finding is probably due to that.
It's interesting.
So I'll have to find. I'm not going to dig through it now. Let's get through the question.
All
I'll
right.
send it to you when I find it. Autumn. Anyone ever wonder the logic behind his funeral shroud allegedly surviving several thousand years when soldiers again allegedly cast lots for his clothes? Now that's a good question, but the family, his mother and one of the apostles found the tomb empty. So the soldiers supposedly, as the story goes in the Bible, there's that loud crack of thunder and all this stuff happened.
Earthquake and the
earthquake, and then the stone kind of moved and gone. And they supposedly ran off and they were scared.
Oh, I thought it was that the soldiers, they divvied up his clothes when he was still on the cross.
Before he was crucified. But
when they put him up on the cross or right before they divvied up his clothes.
Right before they divvied him up. But I think Autumn's talking about if the logic behind his funeral shroud allegedly surviving several thousand years when soldiers allegedly cast lots for his clothes. They didn't cast lots for his burial shroud.
Right. That was found in the tomb. But it's only getting a mention like in any of the versions that I went through. So this wasn't the only one, this big ass punishment Bible. I went through a bunch, and the notation is basically they went in and found the burial cloth on the floor. There's only one account, which is John's account mentions the napkin. The other three accounts don't mention that. In most of the versions that I found, it's just the burial cloth and that it's on the floor. That's it. There isn't, and after that, there's no other mention of it, which is surprising to me. I mean, if it were to survive again, like I would think it would have a little bit more of a notation, like Simon Peter going, "Holy shit, it's got the image on it." I also have a conspiracy theory we can talk about after the show.
So isn't it awfully odd that the image on the shroud matches the contemporary Jesus so closely? If Jesus existed, he didn't look like that. I don't know. There was a recent news article that supposedly experts, whoever those are, came up with what they think he would have looked like.
Right.
And
we don't know.
Not necessarily like that. But then again, if we are to accept that he was badly beaten, facial structures and things are going to look a little different if your nose is all busted up and you're swollen across your face and you've been severely beaten. So I really don't know.
There was also something.
But before you go on, but that brings up another interesting point, that if it was swollen and beaten up, it wouldn't be symmetrical. You would imagine that the injury and just trauma would be asymmetrical.
I think they note that it's supposedly based on the image. Looking at it, one of those, I don't know if it was National Geographic or one of the other ones, made notes about that, where you could supposedly see the swelling in the face and the nose and the cheekbone. And
I take all the marks from that one picture were wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the flailing kind of whip, it had like a 3. You're talking about those. It had like a 3 metal balls at the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there was another tradition that I was curious about, but again, the timing might not work. That he should have been shaved too. His hair should have been shaved, because they do that. That's Jewish burial custom. At the time of Jesus, would be shaving hair, especially around the beard.
I guess I don't know. I guess the thing that always sticks with that, and people always, from what I've read, they're arguing back, is it was a rushed process.
Right. That's why I mentioned
not traditional because it was rushed.
Right.
Nighttime was coming. Jewish celebration the next day.
I guess to be fair, I would think the early Christians, like a night like that, probably wouldn't be aware of the Jewish customs like that as much. So
maybe
something to think about.
Okay, John, as was the norm back then, let's assume Jesus was real. Would he not have been tossed in a mass grave as all the poor was done in the day? No, because the tomb was donated by somebody who basically gave it to him, right? And the family and apostles were there.
Wasn't it Joseph of Arimathea?
Yeah.
I think that was it, yeah.
Yep. So he would, I think from that standpoint, I would probably say no. I mean, if nobody was there to claim him, and it was just a prisoner, they probably would have. But in this case, anybody there that would have known him had a tomb. That makes sense that he would have.
I mean, he had a posse. Like the boy had followers. All right. So he wasn't, it wasn't like you said, David, it wasn't like he was some random homeless guy that nobody knew of. He had a following. According to the stories, he had a following.
Yeah.
So somebody took care of him.
Autumn, I never understood why the stone rolled out of place was supposed to be so amazing. If they were able to roll it in front of the cave, why wouldn't grave robbers be able to roll it back? I guess.
I think the amazing part is that depending on the version, because there's 2 versions that you read. One is that when Mary Magdalene comes to visit the grave tomb, the stone is already rolled out of the way.
Right.
And the other version is that there are 2 angels or 1 angel. So there's more than 2 versions, rolls it while she's there. And so that's the amazing part, that an angel comes down and rolls it out of the way. The first version is when it's already rolled out, they go in and they actually find 2, what they could describe as angels already in the spot, which it sounds weird because it sounds like they're standing on the table, or maybe they're beside the table. The first reading, I was like, sounds like they're standing on the table, but one's at the foot, one is at the head of the table where the body would be. So yeah, that's the amazing part.
Tim, anything?
No.
Let's just be done for like crying out loud.
He's deep in thought.
I am. I was, yeah.
Last question. Not sure if this has been addressed already, but wasn't it said to be a Da Vinci painting at some point?
I remember that floating around.
I think so, but I think through the analysis, they've pretty much completely ruled out it's not a painting.
Da Vinci was brought up later on. I know in the extensive timeline that I have, he's mentioned, I don't know where it is. Again, it's 47 pages. So I'm not going to go through it, but I know he's mentioned, but not in relation to being a source of it, because he came into the story long after it was already there. Now I'm curious. I got to find out when he lived.
14, 20 something.
Bob has answered for us. Thank you, Bob. Our behind the scenes researcher. He was not born until 1452.
All right. So yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
100 years, about 100 years after it first made an appearance. Yeah. So it wasn't him.
All right, so that's it with the questions. I feel as though we should give Tim the first shot at the closing comments, so he can
Yeah.
let us know
What
he
direction
thinks.
did you go?
First question. While you guys were, some of the things I was doing was just highlighting a quote or two. Just again, it was just more, I got more interested and fascinated with the importance of symbols and cultural. So I'll highlight that. I'll just go over one of the statements from Mary Lacrone Foster, an anthropologist that studies that. Also, there's another one. There is a symbolic anthropology as well, which is a very specific, which I did enjoy reading. But my first thought is I would love to know what happened or where that was for the first, I guess, 1,300 years. Like, where was that? Like, that's very interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know where that Sir Jeff, let me get his name. When he showed up, the knight that showed up with the like where was he? Like, I would like to know his travels. Like, where was he going from to turn? Like, what was the path? It would at least put a geographical location where he was when he says he found it, which could give a lot of information about maybe how it ended up there. Other than that, I will just really quickly read you for my closing, which is as for symbolic constructs and relics, it's this is just a quote from Mary Foster. It says, these concrete representations are the symbols by which that culture is activated, communicated to the members of the society. Without such shared symbols, no human society could function. And I kind of think that that's a very interesting take, being that it is a sort of tangible thing that holds beliefs together and holds people together. So whether it's real, whether it really came from Jesus, whether it didn't, I think that the importance also lies in that it's a tangible item that gives hope for a lot of people. And that's important. And that's just one of the things that they have. The other thing that I was going to finish with was there are a lot of other relics as well. But if you, so I'll just briefly go through some other Christian relics. The True Cross, I think, Damn It Bob had mentioned that. It's believed to be that there are some pieces of the cross that Jesus was crucified on. The Holy Grail, which we all love that story. The Veil of Veronica. So according to legend, Saint Veronica wiped Jesus' face with a cloth during his journey, leaving the impression.
They tried to link that to the Shroud at one point in some of the stuff I was reading.
The Holy Robe is another one that is believed to be the seamless garment worn by Jesus.
Isn't that the Technicolor robe?
Yeah. It's believed to be housed in the Cathedral of Trier in Germany. Some Islamic, the Black Stone of the Kaaba. Buddhist, the tooth relic of Buddha.
Damn, we got our next 2 years of shows planned out here.
I know.
And I mean, but this, I think, why I like this was because it kind of just goes in conjunction with where you have a culture and you have a culture of beliefs and you have things that are so important to that culture. It's interesting that every subset of a larger culture has their own relics, that they have their things that they cling to and hold on to for faith. And
right.
Yeah. The Ark of the Covenant. I think Dr. Jones solved that one. The Spear of Destiny. Thank you, Kenny. I was wondering when.
Yeah.
Don't open it.
I think that was also something Dr. Jones handled.
The Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant and the Spear of Destiny.
Yeah, Spear of Destiny. Yeah, that was the next. Which is, if you don't know, it's the spear that pierced Jesus' side during the crucifixion. And then there was the one that I mentioned to you, the Sidorium of Oviedo, which is another cloth that was allegedly placed alongside or with the Shroud of Turin.
All right.
There you go.
It's awesome.
That's
All right.
I had 8 pages and 8 pages of one paper and 4 pages of another. But it had nothing to do with all the cool sciencey stuff you guys did.
Thank you, Tim. That's good stuff, though.
That's why I like this.
Yeah, no matter, it's a different view, but it doesn't matter if it's real or not. The impact that it has on people can't be discounted.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely, and it's cross-cultural. So there's relics and symbolic across the board.
Yeah. All right, Kenny.
For me, First, I love this because we get to see, like, Tim, you went in a completely different direction, which is awesome because it brings in a different approach, and I love that we come together on this. When it comes to this shroud, I still have this idea that it's not. I'm not looking at Jesus. I don't think I am. I think there's something that happened. There's the problem of 1,300 years. We have no idea where it's from, and we don't know if it was made. If it was made, the fact that we don't know how it was done and we can't recreate it tells me a lot. It doesn't tell me that we're stupid. It doesn't tell me that it's some supernatural thing. There's a lot of factors in play, and we talked about a lot of them tonight. That can change composition of chemicals. It can change the wear and tear of it. It's an object, yeah, but is it the object that was wrapped around the body of the center of the Christian religion? I don't think so. But I don't know. I honestly don't know. From a photography point of view, lots of things stand out to me that are wrong, that don't hold true with what should be on that shroud. According to the tradition, the way it was supposed to be wrapped, things don't hold true. I like the fact, and it's weird, but I like the fact that the church is not saying it's real, that they're not saying, yes, this is the shroud of Jesus. But they're also, it kind of leans towards what you were touching on, Tim, is that they're making the most of it. They're taking advantage of it. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. I'm not the one to make that decision. I think early on, according to the history that we do know about it, I think there was an attraction to money. I think there was some greed involved, especially how it changed hands. And
yes, that was an interesting story as well. Yeah. Very interesting story how it changed hands.
It changed hands, and it was loaned and wasn't given back and then put on display, and deals were made. There's a lot of like money and fame and kind of thing going on.
Marriages for power was traded.
Yeah. So I think it's a great story, and I think that's what sells it. There's a great dramatic story here that has lots of elements of supernaturals, of drama, of politics, of money, of this and that, and it's all the elements of a good drama that we see on TV today.
All three of us should make a movie. We just need like a couple $100 million backers, or $100 million in a backer.
I can make a shroud.
I would love to. I'll play the knight.
I don't know what caused it, and I think this is something that's not going to be solved because, again, it comes back to my original statement in the beginning. I think a lot of people are overthinking it. So many people have made up their minds already. And I think it's hard to find independent, neutral testing because you're going to have testing on one side that's thinking, no, it's not real. And you're going to have testing on the other side where they are firm believers in it. And they're going to test it to kind of like the ghost hunter skeptic mentality. Ghost hunters are out to prove ghosts exist. Some skeptics are out to prove like they don't. I try to fall in the middle. But there's not really much else I can say about it. I don't want to take up all the time. So I'm going to end there and pass it back to Dave.
I'll keep this really short so we can get into what's coming up next, and then we can end the show. I'll quote paper from, 2012 in Scientific Research and Essays, Open Issues Regarding the Turin Shroud. Very short. Until now, no experimental techniques have been proposed which can reproduce all the particular characteristics of the two-body images. And that's why people are still looking into it. If they take the thing we talked about earlier, there's 40 different characteristics, chemical, biological, micro, macro. Nobody can recreate that and then put it through the same analysis and get exactly the same thing. That's why people keep looking at it. Then you have all these problems with the dating, the aging, this is not a traditional custom, but it might have been rushed. I mean, for every argument, there's a counter argument. And for every piece of data, there's either newer data or something that can counter that data. So I think it's going to remain a mystery for a while. If it's Jesus or not, we don't know. The fact that we can't 100% recreate it and they don't know for sure how it was formed is pretty cool. Either somebody was pretty intelligent and pretty neat process they figured out. And the fact that I love to think maybe a couple guys were sitting around in the 1300s, created this and go, these fuckers in 2024 are still going to be talking about this. That cracks me up. It seems like something the three of us would do.
Right.
But if you want to believe, it's up to you to take the information and believe what you will. I think it's still unexplained how the image got there. There might be a biological chemical basis for it, but how that happened, I don't know. So it was fun to look into. I can't believe how much shit there is about this.
So much.
so much. I mean, I was just like, holy shit, 16,400 hits on Google Scholar. I'm like, well, I'm out after like 12. And that's good enough.
I searched Google Scholar for the belief and the need and the anthropology of it.
Yeah.
And like I got so many, you know how you go over to the left hand, you're like, oh, let's just do it from 2020 to 2024. Still thousands. I was
crazy.
like, okay.
It is definitely probably the most investigated, studied, relic ever.
I mean, they've tried. I mean, they've done a great job. I mean, you're talking 50, 60 scientists, 5 tons of equipment. They're still analyzing stuff from it back from all the samples and the data they collected. But it would be really cool. And I would hope someday, and this is my last comment, I hope they open it up again for another scientific investigation, take all the learnings that they did before, all the shortcomings, design the proper analysis, and hopefully get to the bottom of it, or at least figure out how fucking old it is without debating it.
And take samples that are what we want, you know.
And I get it though. Destructive to destroy it, that's a huge issue. I get it.
Like I understand it, but when you look at even the one report that you sent us, the last one that shows, hold on, where is it? Because it showed pictures. We're still going. Can you believe it? We're still going.
We're into hour 3.
I know.
Oh
we're going pretty. Where the hell did I?
Was it the X-ray one or was it the?
Yeah. Here.
Yeah,
so
the Heritage article.
Just looking at that picture. All right, showing you they're taking one fiber. Just take a couple strands from that.
And this is not destructive. Like we said, they could send it to 10 different people and repeat it, make sure they're all getting the same answer.
I'm not even looking at the wide X-ray kind of thing. I'm looking at taking a few strands off of there. You're not going to miss it. You're not going to miss it. And if you're already treating it officially as a relic, not an actual item that was wrapped around it, that's how the church is treating it. Then have the real test done. Or just come clean and say, no, we don't want to know. We'd rather stay here and let people believe than to actually know, and just stop. Stop all testing.
Yep.
You know,
well, maybe when they decide to bring it out for another public showing, they will allow it because they don't have it on display all the time, which is too bad because I get to travel to Europe for work, and if that thing was on display,
that would be cool.
Hell yeah.
I would definitely, especially knowing, like, reading people saying it looks different than the photos.
No one
The image-
show up and go, I can't fucking see it. What are they talking about?
That's what I'm afraid of. I'll be like, I don't see shit. what? Where is it?
Can you take it out of the box, please? I'd like to.
Is this the wrong one?
So,
You got it
anyway.
backwards. I'm looking at the back.
Backwards.
All right.
Anyway, so all right, great discussion. Good show, long show, but good show. Thought it was interesting. And who's up next? Tim?
I think it's Tim.
I think it's me. I think Kenny follows me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you're up.
Kenny. Yeah.
And we may have a guest for that show, possibly, maybe.
I sent the invitation and an email, and have not heard back. So
okay.
I don't know. Maybe he watched some of our shows and was like, no.
That's understandable.
I can't talk with these drunk idiots.
Yeah.
All right. So what do we have going on? I will say that we are going to be at the historic Hanover Tavern for a conference at the end of January.
January 31st, February 1st.
Yep. So the three of us will be there with a yet to be finalized topic, but it will be finalized before the night before we get there because we have to provide that. So we have to put it in the agenda.
Prepare.
So that's it. And
we
then,
should put an asterisk that says subject to change, though. I mean,
up until the time we start.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right.
Tell
Tim,
it could change right in the middle.
It
Same
could.
thing. Yeah. And it probably will. Yep.
Yes. Sorry. Yes, we will do a movie night.
Yeah.
Maybe we can try to get that done before the end of the calendar year.
How about what's your calendar look like on the 18th? It's a Wednesday night.
Let me look.
That's
I love
right.
the sigh.
I think I might be available.
Yes. Tim?
My last day of work for the year is the 13th.
Okay.
Oh, damn.
So the
Dave.
18th is open.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So how about we do that? We plan on the 18th movie night. What movie are we watching? Didn't we have Ghost Ship? Wasn't Ghost Ship?
Ghost Ship might have been it. Yeah. That might have been it.
I have that. I have the DVD. So
okay, good.
If we can set that up. So Tim, like you have Zoom. I think you set up.
We have a big Zoom account.
Okay. So we'll talk about that this week. And we're looking at December 18th and we'll send out, we'll post something and we'll figure out how to send out the invitations and everything. So everyone can watch a movie with us. A crappy movie.
All right. What does the Book of Biddle have going on?
The book. Let me see here. Let me open the big book. Well, let's see. We have this Friday night. I have a guest on the Skeptical Help Bar. His name is Adam Chefs. He does this book, History's Haunted Headlines, and he collects headlines from the 1800s into these huge volumes.
Cool.
And it's all about ghosts and haunted houses that have been reported in newspapers across America.
That is really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
I would not have thought about that.
It's pretty cool looking. So I'm going to have him on. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And then next Wednesday, the 11th, I'm going to be on the Paranormal Brew with Ben Rafford. We're going to be talking about the Entity case, the Doris Byther case, and some of our work into that.
With number 4?
Yeah, with number 4.
Oh, I got it. What date is that?
The 11th.
Oh, I got it. I got to set a reminder for that.
And then the 13th, Friday, the 13th, I'm going to have Margaret Downey on my Skeptical Help Bar. She is a expert in frigatrescidecaphobia, which is the fear of Friday the 13th. So we're going to have a fun show and just talk about that and anything else that she comes up with. And then lastly, the 21st of December is the winter solstice party here at the Center for Inquiry. If you're interested, you go on the Center for Inquiry Western New York group. I will be posting a link soon. It's $20, but it's catered. It's catered dinner, activities, socializing. You get tours of the facility here. I'm going to do a big tour of everything that we have here. So if you're in the area, come on by.
Cool.
And that's it. That's it.
All right. Well, thanks to everybody for joining us. Fun night. Hope you all have a good couple weeks before we're back with movie night, which will be fun. And now I got to figure out how to end this thing without screwing it up. So, yes, we can end it with the closing.
So you should be able to just hit end stream.
Okay, so this is on you if it fucks up now.
So if you look, you're looking at the video clip, right?
Yeah, so it says play outro.
Outro is in there.
End.
So you have an outro there. So you'll hit.
All right, here we go. We're gonna we'll give it a whirl. If it fucks it up, who cares? Whatever. All right, take care. Have a good night, everybody.
And what you say, oh, you'll get better.